Billionaire paid in cash. Black Waitress noticed the serial numbers and froze. What if a single moment could change everything you thought you knew about someone? Diane Morrison had been working the evening shift at Miller's Diner for 8 years, serving coffee and comfort food to truckers, families, and the occasional businessman who wandered off the interstate. At 36, she'd seen it all, or so she thought. The fluorescent lights hummed their familiar tune above the worn vinyl booths, and the smell of fresh pie mixed with coffee created that timeless diner atmosphere that made everyone feel at home. But tonight felt different somehow, though she couldn't put her finger on why. Maybe it was the way the rain drummed against the windows, or how the clock on the wall seemed to tick a little slower. Sometimes life has a way of preparing us for moments that will matter, even when we don't see them coming. Diane wiped down the counter one more time, glancing at the door as headlights swept across the parking lot. She had no idea that the next customer would turn her world upside down in the most unexpected way. "Where are you watching from tonight?" The bell above the door chimed as a man in an expensive suit stepped into the warm glow of Miller's Diner, shaking raindrops from his umbrella. Diane looked up from refilling the coffee station, taking in the stranger who clearly didn't belong in their small-town establishment. His charcoal suit probably cost more than her monthly rent, and his leather shoes had that pristine shine that spoke of a life far removed from her world of double shifts and tip jars. "Evening," she called out with the practiced warmth she'd perfected over the years. "Sit anywhere you'd like, hon. I'll be right with you." The man, who appeared to be in his early 40s with graying temples and kind eyes, chose a corner booth away from the other patrons. Diane grabbed a menu and a glass of water, walking over to greet him properly. Up close, she noticed something unexpected. Despite the expensive clothes and polished appearance, there was something humble in his demeanor, a gentleness that seemed at odds with his obvious wealth. "What can I get started for you tonight?" she asked, setting down the water with a genuine smile. "Actually, I'm not sure," he admitted, studying the laminated menu. "I haven't been in a place like this for, well, it's been a long time. What do you recommend?" There was something in his voice, a longing, maybe, or nostalgia, that caught Diane's attention. "The meatloaf's really good. Made it myself this afternoon. Comes with mashed potatoes and green beans. Real comfort food." "That sounds perfect," he said, closing the menu. "And coffee, if you don't mind. Black." As Diane walked to the kitchen to place the order, she couldn't shake the feeling that this man carried some kind of weight with him. It wasn't just his expensive clothes that set him apart, it was the way he'd looked around the diner like he was remembering something precious but lost. The evening crowd was thin, just a few regulars nursing their coffee and a young couple sharing dessert. Diane found herself stealing glances at the stranger as he sat quietly, occasionally looking out the rain-streaked window. When she brought his meal, he thanked her with a sincerity that seemed to surprise them both. "This smells amazing," he said, taking his first bite. "You weren't kidding about comfort food." "Been making it the same way for 8 years, Diane replied proudly. "My grandmother's recipe." They chatted briefly about the weather and the town, nothing too personal, but Diane sensed he was someone who rarely had normal conversations anymore. When he finished eating, he complimented the meal again and asked for the check. Diane tallied it up, $12.50, and handed him the small slip of paper. What happened next would replay in her mind for weeks to come. Instead of reaching for a credit card or wallet, the man pulled out a thick roll of cash. Not unusual in itself, plenty of truckers paid cash, but something about these bills made Diane freeze mid-breath. As he peeled off a $20 bill, she caught sight of the serial numbers, and her heart began to race. The pattern was unmistakable, something she'd seen on the news just days before. Diane's hands trembled slightly as she stared at the $20 bill lying on the table. The serial number seemed to burn into her vision, B88934521A. The same pattern she'd memorized from the FBI bulletin that had been posted in the break room just 3 days ago. The news report had been clear. A string of counterfeit bills with sequential serial numbers was circulating through the Midwest, and businesses were urged to report any suspicious currency immediately. Her mind raced as she tried to process what this meant. This kind, gentle man who'd eaten her grandmother's meatloaf recipe and spoken so warmly about the diner, could he really be involved in something criminal? The logical part of her brain screamed that she should excuse herself and call the police, but her heart wrestled with doubt. Nothing about his demeanor suggested deception or danger. "Keep the change," he said softly, not noticing her distress. The meal was wonderful, and the service even better. Diane forced a smile, her voice catching slightly. "Thank you, that's very generous." She picked up the bill with hands that she hoped weren't shaking too obviously. "I'll just get your change from the register." "Really, please keep it," he insisted. "It's been a long time since I've had such an authentic meal. You've given me something I didn't know I was missing." As she walked toward the register, Diane's mind spun with conflicting emotions. The counterfeit bills on the news had been linked to a major fraud ring that had stolen millions from banks across 3 states. But this man seemed so genuinely kind, so appreciative of simple pleasures like homemade meatloaf. Could someone involved in serious crime really be this human? She thought about her daughter Jasmine, asleep at home with the babysitter, and how much that $8 tip would help with groceries this week. She thought about her responsibility to report suspicious activity, drilled into every service worker after countless news stories about fraud and theft. But she also thought about the loneliness she'd sensed in this stranger, the way he'd savored every bite of food like someone who'd forgotten what it felt like to be cared for. Behind her, she heard him gathering his things. "Ma'am," he called gently. "I hope this doesn't sound presumptuous, but you seem like someone who works very hard. I hope you know that people like you, people who take pride in simple kindness, are what make the world worth living in." His words hit her like a physical blow. How could someone say something so beautiful while potentially being involved in serious crime? Diane turned back toward him, the $20 bill still clutched in her hand, and for a moment their eyes met across the dimly lit diner. "If this moment touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up." The stranger began walking toward the door, pausing to leave another 20 on the counter near the cash register. "For whoever's working the late shift," he said quietly. "Everyone deserves kindness." As the bell chimed and he disappeared into the rainy night, Diane stood frozen between the register and his empty booth, holding what might be evidence of a federal crime committed by a man who seemed to embody everything good about humanity. Diane's shift ended at midnight, but she sat in her beat-up Honda in the diner's parking lot until nearly 1 in the morning, staring at the $20 bill under the dome light. She'd folded and unfolded it a dozen times, memorizing every detail, comparing it to other bills in her tip jar. To her untrained eye, it looked perfectly legitimate, but those serial numbers haunted her. The rain had stopped, leaving the world glistening under the streetlights. She thought about her conversation with her sister last month, when Keisha had warned her about being too trusting. "Diane, you see the good in everyone," she'd said. "But sometimes people aren't who they seem to be." Maybe this was one of those times. But then she remembered the way the stranger had spoken about her work, the genuine appreciation in his voice when he'd thanked her for the meal. She'd served thousands of customers over the years, and she'd developed an instinct for reading people. The lonely ones, the angry ones, the ones just passing through versus those looking for connection. This man had seemed like someone carrying a heavy burden, not someone trying to deceive her. Her phone rang, startling her from her thoughts. "Mom, you okay?" Jasmine's sleepy voice came through the speaker. At 16, her daughter had inherited Diane's caring nature and worried when she was late. "I'm fine, baby. Just finishing up some paperwork. Go back to sleep." "Okay. Love you, Mom." "Love you too, sweetheart." The call reminded her of what mattered most. If this man was involved in something illegal, and she didn't report it, could she be putting others at risk? But if she reported an innocent person based on a hunch, could she live with that either? She pulled out her phone and Googled the news story about the counterfeit bills. The article was brief but disturbing. Multi-million-dollar counterfeiting ring targets small businesses across the Midwest. Business owners urged to report suspicious currency with serial numbers beginning B889. Her heart sank as she read further. The bills were so sophisticated that even some banks had initially missed them. But as she scrolled through the article, another detail caught her attention. The counterfeit bills were being used in large purchases, electronics, jewelry, cars. Not $12 meals at roadside diners. And the suspects were described as working in coordinated groups, not alone. Have you ever faced something like this? Let us know in the comments. Diane looked at the 20 again, then at the second bill he'd left for the late shift worker. She walked back into the diner and found old Pete, the night cook, cleaning the grill. Pete, that customer who left the extra 20. Did you see him leave? Nice fella, Pete said, not looking up from his work. Told me the meatloaf reminded him of his mother's cooking. Said he hadn't tasted anything that good since she passed away 5 years ago. Why? Diane felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't a criminal using fake money to defraud small businesses. This was a man trying to connect with something precious he'd lost. But that still didn't explain the serial numbers, and she found herself standing at the crossroads between trust and responsibility, knowing that her next decision would define who she really was. The next morning, Diane couldn't concentrate on anything. She'd called in sick to work, something she rarely did, and spent the morning researching everything she could about counterfeit currency. By noon, she'd made a decision that terrified and excited her in equal measure. She was going to find this man and ask him directly about the money. It seemed impossible until she remembered him mentioning that he was staying at the Hampton Inn near the interstate. There was only one in town. She drove there with the $20 bill in her purse and a heart full of nervous determination. The desk clerk was hesitant to give out guest information until Diane explained that a customer had left something at the diner. Room 237, the young man said. Mr. Richard Blackwood. But I think he was planning to check out this morning. Diane's heart raced as she rode the elevator to the second floor. What was she doing? This could be dangerous, foolish, or both. But something deeper than logic was driving her forward, a need to understand the truth about someone who had touched her heart with his kindness. She knocked softly on room 237. After a moment, the door opened, and there he was, looking as surprised as she felt. He was dressed more casually now, jeans and a simple sweater, and somehow looked both more approachable and more mysterious. Diane, he said, clearly puzzled. Is everything all right? Did I forget something at the diner? Not exactly, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Mr. Blackwood, I need to ask you something, and I hope you'll be honest with me. His expression grew serious. Of course. Please, come in. The hotel room was neat and sparse, with just a small suitcase on the bed and what looked like financial documents spread across the desk. Diane noticed immediately that everything appeared legitimate. Hotel letterhead, bank statements, business cards. Mr. Blackwood, she began, pulling out the $20 bill. I need to ask you about this money. The serial numbers, they match a pattern that's been in the news. Counterfeit bills. For a moment, Richard stared at the bill, and then something extraordinary happened. He began to laugh, not mockingly, but with genuine relief. Oh my God, he said, sitting down heavily in the desk chair. Of course you'd notice. You're exactly the kind of person who pays attention to details. He looked up at her with eyes that seemed suddenly lighter. Diane, I'm going to tell you something that might sound impossible, but every word is true. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a leather folder. My name is Richard Blackwood, and I'm the CEO of Blackwood Financial. 3 months ago, our company was the victim of a sophisticated cyber attack that resulted in $8 million being stolen from our accounts. The FBI recovered most of it, but there was a problem. He opened the folder and showed her official FBI documents. Some of the recovered money, legitimate bills that had been stolen, were mistakenly flagged in the Bureau's database as potentially counterfeit because of how they were processed during the investigation. The serial numbers you saw are from that batch. If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. I've been traveling with cash because my credit cards were compromised in the attack, and I'm using the legitimate bills that were cleared for circulation. I had no idea they were still causing concern. Diane felt her knees grow weak with relief as Richard showed her the official FBI clearance letter, the bank statements confirming the cyber attack recovery, and even a business card from the federal agent handling his case. Everything was legitimate, documented, and heartbreakingly real. "So you're not a criminal," she said, finally allowing herself to smile. "You're a victim. In more ways than one," Richard admitted quietly. "The attack didn't just steal our money, Diane. It stole something else. My faith in people, my ability to trust simple human connection. I've been traveling for weeks, staying in different places, trying to feel normal again. Last night, when you served me that meal with such genuine care, it was the first time in months I felt like a person instead of a target." Diane sat down across from him, overwhelmed by the realization that her instincts had been right. "Why didn't you just tell me last night when you saw me looking at the money?" "Because," Richard said softly, "I've gotten used to being suspicious of everyone's motives. When you looked concerned, I assumed you were trying to figure out how much money I had, maybe planning to overcharge me or something. I've become cynical about human nature." "But you weren't thinking about money at all, were you? You were thinking about doing the right thing." "I was thinking about protecting my community," Diane said. "And also, I was thinking about protecting you. Something about you seemed too genuine to be involved in anything criminal." Richard stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the small town beyond. "You know what the worst part about being wealthy is, Diane? It's not knowing if people care about you or your money. Last night, you cared about me, the person, enough to worry about whether I was making a terrible mistake. That's a gift I'd forgotten existed." He turned back to her with a decision forming in his eyes. "I want to do something, but I need you to promise me you'll let me." "What kind of something?" "The kind that might help your daughter with college, or let you take a vacation, or just give you some security. Not because I'm trying to buy your friendship, but because kindness like yours deserves to be rewarded." Diane felt tears forming in her eyes. "Mr. Blackwood. Richard. Please. Richard, you don't owe me anything. You already gave me something precious last night." "What's that?" "You reminded me why I love my job. You reminded me that serving people isn't just about food and tips, it's about being part of someone's story, even if it's just for one evening." 3 months later, Diane received a letter from Richard. He'd returned to his company and implemented a new program providing microloans to small business owners in rural communities. Miller's Diner was among the first recipients, allowing them to expand their hours and hire 2 additional staff members. The letter ended with a simple line, "Thank you for seeing the person behind the suit." If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales like this one. Sometimes the most important moments in our lives come disguised as ordinary encounters, reminding us that kindness and trust, even in an uncertain world, remain the most powerful forces for good.